Hello and welcome to Alfie Ordinary's Living Legends, the show where I'll be chatting to some of the most celebrated drag performers of past, present and future. I am your host, Alfie Ordinary, and I'll be sitting down with drag royalty to talk big gigs, big wigs and what it really means to be a living legend of the UK drag scene. And speaking of living legends, today I am joined by none other than drag king Adam All. Hello Adam, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you so much for having me, Alfie.
Thank you for coming, it's so lovely to see you.
I'm delighted to be here.
You look absolutely gorgeous.
It's very nice.
Do you like what I've done with the place?
I do, it's fabulous.
Often referred to as the godfather of the modern UK drag king movement, Adam All is one of the most recognisable faces in the UK drag king scene. He is the co-founder of BoiBox, London's legendary, long-standing drag king cabaret show. So, as you know, we're here to talk about the UK drag scene, the movers and the shakers, which I consider you absolutely one of them. So,
thank you.
Why don't we start at the very beginning? A very good place to start. So tell me about the first time you were in drag.
The first time I was consciously in drag, because obviously as little kids, we wear costumes, don't we, for lots of things.
Absolutely.
And I definitely wore lots of boy costumes. Bambi was a boy.
Yes.
Boy costumes.
Yes.
When I was little, tiny. But that's not consciously, like, purposefully creating a character in dress. So the first time I dressed in drag, I was 17. I went to a New Year's party. No one had a clue why or what I was doing. I just rocked up in drag and they were like, what is this? And I went, I don't know. My name's Trev.
Trev? What was Trev wearing? Who was Trev?
Oh, he just had this pinstripe suit thing and this beautiful metallic-y crimson shirt and matching tie with a trilby and a big cigar and these really shiny black shoes. And I was bound and I had packing and everything. I've gone.
Oh, you went full?
Yeah, I went for it.
Full.
And I had a little goatee and I really went for it.
So how long after that was your first gig, the first time that we see Adam?
Years and years.
Yeah.
Like I continued dressing in drag. I did other things. I went to some sort of drag balls, did some stuff, but the actual show, my very first performance where I actually did a thing on a stage, didn't just stand there in a costume. I was 26. It was 2008. I remember the date exactly because it just so happens to coincide with my wife's birthday, which is November 2008. I had a show, a sort of new performers slot on a Friday night at the London Hotel in Southampton.
I know it, yeah.
And it was a half-hour slot.
Half an hour?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
what did you do?
I did a bunch of songs. I had about 6 weeks to prepare for it. Because it was a local drag queen, Lucinda Lashes, who got me the gig. I know.
Lucinda Legend.
Lucinda Legend.
I know her, yeah.
Who I've been following around doing all her karaoke's for like decades.
Great.
And I was obsessed with. And she just went, look, for God's sake, here's backing tracks. Get your shit together. So I had 6 weeks to prepare. So I just chose 6 songs I liked to sing that I thought I could do reasonably well, practiced them as much as I could, and then wrote some story banter to fit in between and had a go.
And how did it go?
Don't remember.
You don't remember? Was it the nerves? Was it?
Yeah, I kind of tunnel visioned. It was fun, and I was really proud of myself for like leaping off that cliff edge because it was such a huge thing I wanted to do, and I didn't know anyone else personally who'd done it as a king, so I kind of was just very tentative. But yeah, I did it.
Were you the first king in that venue at the time?
I can't have been the first king ever. There must have been other kings performing there.
Of your knowledge?
Of my knowledge, yeah.
Because it's quite a long-standing drag bar.
Yes, absolutely.
With drag queens every weekend.
Yeah, and there have been waves of kings all through the century, so there must have been. But, I mean, not that I knew of.
And so how long, was that like the start of your career, or was that like a one-off and then you came back to it later?
I kind of just got the bug. So Lucinda actually got me 3 gigs, quite far apart. I did those 3 thinking I wouldn't do much more beyond that point, but I got offered 1 or 2 other things, but it was literally, a month apart per thing.
Yeah.
And then 6 months in, somebody told me to enter. See, I'm just being led around by the nose at this point. I was told to enter Drag Idol because it was the first year, 2009, that they were allowing non-drag queens, so other kinds of performers to enter Drag Idol. And I entered I was supposed to enter in Portsmouth, but I couldn't make the date, so I entered in Brighton. And I won, and I got through to the semis at the Black Cap. And then I got through to the finals, and I was the first king to ever make the finals. And it was like crazy.
Oh my gosh. For anyone that doesn't know, Drag Idol is a national drag competition where the prize is essentially a career, isn't it? Your first prize, you get booked in every single, there's regional heats, and then you get booked in all of those venues. So the winner will spend the next year touring around the country, becoming a drag star of the scene. And you were the first king to be in the finale.
In the finals, yeah.
Well, congratulations on that for a start. And that was 2009.
2009, long
many
time ago
moons
now.
ago.
Yeah.
So tell me about the night. How did it go down? What happened?
Well, it wasn't actually easy. So I had 10 minutes, which isn't very long. And obviously I'm kind of, at this point, I don't really know much about it. So I've just put my 2 songs together. I'm going to do my thing. I had my tails on and my top hat. And I was like, I'm going to do this. But the stage isn't very high. It's only about that high. It's tiny. And little me on it isn't really much.
No heels?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not actually physically taller than the front row.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Beyond the front row, I couldn't actually be seen, apart from the judges who were raised. So anyone else beyond the front row.
Stone-faced.
So it was just a wall of gay men.
Oh my gosh.
In the front row. And then literally all like this. And then one guy right in the middle, and I'll never forget this, he turned his back on me, like full-on protest, arms folded, harumph, like standing right in the middle of my set. And I tapped him on the shoulder in the middle of my song as if to say, turn around. And he went, as if to shrug me off. And I'm like, why is this guy so angry about it? And I thought, well, do you know what's really disappointing is that there's probably someone who'd enjoy my set standing right behind you, can't see anything. That's not fair. That's on you, mate.
Was it difficult?
It was very hard
to enter spaces, I guess, that are traditionally, like you said, with the London Hotel, like a drag queen venue.
Yeah.
The 2 Brewers, a Drag Idol not even allowing kings in before you entered. So you entered a competition as a fresh new face, as a new genre of drag, new genre, look at us. So how was it after that, even though you had being a finalist of the biggest competition in the UK at the time?
It didn't really change that much for me. I still had to claw my way in. I think it was the way that I ended up building my career wasn't really connected to that crowd, because that door was not really open to me. I was very, very green, and I'd only really done a handful of shows, and I wasn't surrounded by other kings learning my trade quickly. I was learning it slowly, and I was building my character over a very long period of time. So I think the best way to describe it would be that I sporadically clawed my way up a very slippery slope. I think eventually I found a little home in the Marlborough, and I did a couple of shows for them there with a crew that created a night called Tom's Salon, which was mostly male impersonators and drag kings doing stuff, but there was quite a wide variety of stuff that they did, but it was time themed. So there was a 1940s one and a 1950s one and a 1960s one, I think. And they were really fun. And then I did a bit of karaoke there, hosted a bit of karaoke there, and then I got a gig hosting karaoke at the Candy Bar. And that's when things started to really pick up.
Candy Bar in London.
Mm-hmm. I did a couple of shows at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern on a Tuesday for Bar Whatever. And I made some connections there. And then things really just started to pull things in together. And then I pitched the idea of BoiBox to the events organiser at the Candy Bar, which is Sandra Davenport, the DJ Sandra Davenport. Yeah. And she was excited by it.
What sort of bar was Candy?
It was typically known as the lesbian bar, but I suppose you'd say queer AFAB and women's space. It was the only one left, there having been about 12 or so across London at various points, and they've all closed down, and Candy was the last one.
So you were based in Brighton for a while, weren't you?
A couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's when you were performing at the Marlborough.
Yeah.
Marlborough Theatre, if you know it, then a much loved place. It's where I did my first show, at the Marlborough Theatre.
Yeah, I think we've met there a couple of times, but I don't know if we met there.
Did we do that Drag King competition together?
Yes, I think it was King of the
Fringe.
King of the Fringe.
As judges.
It was amazing. I think we were really starved of that sort of entertainment, and I think that beautiful energy, it's not given anywhere near enough places to blossom. That kind of drag king audience, the kind of audience is like, I really get this, and it's really reaching to me, and I understand what's happening, and I relate to this person on the stage, and there just aren't really, even now, really enough spaces where...
Absolutely. And so you obviously saw this as a thing that needed to be addressed, and so you did it yourself. If something... What was it you said? before? If,
be the change you want to see.
Be the change you want to see. Animal.
Not sure that was me, actually.
Well, it is now.
Much more important said that at some point.
Now you run BoiBox.
I do, with my
in
wife,
London,
yeah.
With your wife?
With my wife, Apple Derrières, who's here.
So you identified that there wasn't a space necessarily that you could see drag kings come and flourish and learn from each other. And so you created one. How important is it for a young queer artist to have a scene or peers or influences around them?
I actually think it's pivotal. I think the wonderful thing about BoiBox, not only watching these kings flourish and come alive, but to see the people connect with a community and find safety and solace in a community, because BoiBox is one of the things that we absolutely centre our values around, is that it's a very sort of warm, embracing family space where you can be a part of it. You're a BoiBoxer, you become a regular, you come and meet everyone, we know each other, yeah. And I really, really like that. I've known people to say, really nice things, like it's changed their life, like they were in a very dark place and then they found this community and it's changed everything, and now they go to, because now there are lots of nights, they'll go to all of the different places, and we'll help people build a career path through the various stages that they can use, and help people get headshots done, and try and literally, it's not just an event where we showcase some acts that people have done. It's like a family that at its roots cherishes and nurtures drag kings, whether they're new or established. Like that's like the point.
And so would you say that you possibly have helped start some flourishing careers of drag kings?
My wife and I kind of really, really wanted to see people build confidence. It's been really something that we've put right at the absolute centre of it. And I think we've 7 years it's been running now, and it's really grown into this really beautiful thing. At the beginning, we had a dress-up box and a karaoke machine and stick-on moustaches, and we just invited anyone to play with masculinity.
So it started as more of an open mic night, didn't it, rather than
we had that section that would run until for the first section, and then on the dot of 9 or whatever, we'd have the actual show, which would run until nearly midnight, and then we'd have a disco club night until the bar closed at 3.
Amazing.
So it's like a really long thing. But people would come and try something out, and then the following month would come back with a full costume and a backing track. Off the go.
Great.
It was amazing, yeah.
Great. Did it start strong? Was it a slow burner? Like your first night. Tell me about the first BoiBox.
The very first BoiBox was breathtaking. Like, I couldn't believe these people just falling out of the woodwork. I knew there was a need. We recognised that there were people who wanted a space. We recognised that there was a massive gap in the market, essentially. So it was the first night was off the chain. We were really astonished by how powerfully it kicked off, and people were really excited to be involved. And we had some big names on the first night.
Really?
Romeo de la Cruz performed on our first big BoiBox launch night, and Lewis Cypher.
Oh, really? Lewis Cypher, who went on to win Drag Idol 2013.
Yeah.
First drag king to win.
Yeah. Legend.
Yeah. And it's so important for young drag artists to have a space to experiment, to start.
Yeah.
Because, when do you get started? You said, Lucinda Lashes basically pushed you on the stage and went, go on.
Very lucky I was.
And so what a wonderful thing to have for young...
Just passing on the love.
And you run that with your wife, Apple, don't
I run that with my wife, Apple Derrières, my real wife.
The real wife.
My onstage wife as well.
Ooh.
And she came up with a name, and we do it together. It's very, very much a 50-50 endeavour. She works extremely hard to help support and encourage these incredible kings, and she performs with me, and she performs her own work as well. She's an incredible drag queen.
And so you perform together, and you travel with this double act as such, Adam and Apple.
Yes, we do. It's really helpful having a second person, because it means you can do costume changes.
Oh yes, the suit jackets. It's not like wearing a dress, is it? You can't just whip it off.
No, there's all sorts of laces and things. It's just not fun. No, we really like playing with the concept of this apparently cis straight couple, and actually their power dynamic and roles in their relationship, and we like to twist those around and play with that a lot. Apple is very much the alpha of the partnership, though Adam is sort of the lead character in the performance. They have a lot of fun together. They flirt together a lot, and there's a lot of fun, poppy, cartoony relationship fun that happens with them. So it's really fun to work with my own wife.
I bet it is. Any stories, any highlights of gigs you've had together?
Oh, thousands of highlights. One of my favourite ones. I'm going to go there because a lot of Apple's amazing work is centred around positive representation of feminine, queer women, and so she writes a lot of pieces that are about vaginas and tampons and periods and stuff, and it's very funny, but it's also very educational and really powerful, and I'm very, very proud of her. She's over there, and
oh, I can see it. So cute.
And one of the great privileges that we got to do was we got to perform for TEDx London Women on a South Bank stage, huge, great big stage to like 1,000 people, and there's the big red blob in the middle of the stage, and it just so happened that we were singing a song about periods. And we were both on our period, standing on a big red blob.
You can't make this up.
I know you couldn't. And there was a little moment when we were singing our lungs out in this space, knowing my parents were somewhere in the audience, and we were singing about loads of slang terms for the vagina. And I'm thinking, my parents down there. And
I'm getting emotional, by the way.
And we clocked each other's eyes, and there was just a little moment where we went, this is our actual lives. You know, and we do have moments like that. It's just...
You have to stop and take count.
Try not to giggle.
Gather your thoughts and go, oh, I'm here doing this with my wife.
And you're here. Yeah, like that.
Was that a big highlight of your career so far?
I think it was a big highlight. I did a TEDx talk, London talk on my own, which was about my early career and how I became a drag king and why I thought it was important. And it was that was really cool. But I think it was, for me, was even more important to feel part of this movement. The TEDx London Women one is just the feminist power behind it. It's a really great thing, and it was an extremely inclusive event, and I felt really safe there. I identify as non-binary out of drag, and they were very much careful around the language they used around me and making me feel welcome and comfortable, and not that wasn't swept under the carpet or anything, that was a part of what we were doing. Yeah. And then we got to talk about it, and I think having that opportunity to share that experience with my wife was just, oh God. Yeah, it was so cool.
Well, gorgeous. I want to talk to you about your career on the drag scene. It's safe to say that it is a very male-dominated scene. What's that like?
It's not easy. I kind of class my gigs like depending on whether or not I think the audience knows anything about a drag king. And if I think I'm going to be either their first drag king or very early drag king, or they've definitely never seen anything quite like what I'm going to give them, I consider it a sort of frontline performance, that I'm going as a teacher, and that I should edit my show accordingly so that my audience can understand the introduction and not just launch into the now.
I've found still 7 years later I have to be like, hello, I am the son of drag, I'm a drag prince. This is it. Otherwise people are going, what's that? That woman looks funny. What's going on?
Yeah.
So you're saying you feel the need to do that when you're in these spaces?
100%. And I do think it's partly my responsibility as well, yeah. I think I'm quite long in the tooth for the stage now, 12 years, and it's important that I kick down those doors wherever I get the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And then immediately say, oh, and by the way, list of other drag kings.
Those are my mates.
Yeah. But I think it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. But you have to just you have to normalise it, and to normalise it, you need to be in the space and be visible and grab it, and not wait for it to be normal before you walk in, because it's not going to happen. What
I've learnt in my years of drag is the importance of having a very solid and established, instantly recognisable character. And I think you are one of those people, you can spot you a mile off. Like, you know what an animal looks like, and if you don't, it's right there. You've got the glasses, you've got the suit, the bow tie. How did it happen? What's behind this Adam that we see in front of us here?
Well, there's some socio-political ideas behind it, but generally speaking, I just like wearing suits. It's a thing. Yeah, I tried on a lot of different outfits, and we discussed it in quite a lot of detail, what we wanted to do and what I wanted to create, and it was all about how the character was definitely a man, but he had turned away from anything toxic, any sort of toxic masculinity, and he'd become nutritious masculinity. We have a very similar approach to the idea of masculinity, I believe.
I think we do. Like, I'm really interested in what it means to be a man without the kind of, like you say, the toxicity of masculinity, you know. And when I first started drag, I really wanted to explore how feminine a male character can be. Or is it feminine? Is this, I'm wearing a suit, you're wearing a suit, you know? Is it camp, is it masculine, is it feminine? Essentially what I'm saying is anyone can wear whatever they like. And what I love about Animal is that you're exploring a type of masculinity that isn't often explored, I would say. Do you have any kind of early influences for your drag?
Oh, so many. So, like my earliest influences of wanting to do drag, I think I saw Tipping the Velvet when they turned it into the TV adaptation.
Yeah.
So that was released in the year 2000. So I was 16 when that came out. I'd already sort of been out for a couple of years, so I had been on the scene. I'd seen drag queens in person, obviously on the telly. I'd never really seen a drag king up close, and then they did this TV show. I read the book immediately, cover to cover, several times. Yay, Sarah Waters, and then everything else she'd ever written. I just kind of, I saw it and I was like, that is what I need to do. That's what I need to do.
Was it like a light bulb moment?
It really was. But I mean, I was 16, so it was a year before I even put a costume together and said it was drag. And then nearly 6, 7, 8 years later, before I actually had a show. So it was a long process.
It's a long process. You can't just, you know, pop it on like that,
yeah,
you know.
But I started off after uni, the credit crunch happened and nobody could find any work. I worked on building sites and I worked around a lot of men who were that sort of toxic masculine,
right,
but only in groups. And then when you get them away from their groups, they'd be like a normal human being, talk to you normally. And you'd be like, there you are, there's the real you. Are you like this when guys are around? Or is this
What is it about men that do that?
I don't know.
Performed masculinity as such, you
right.
know, we all perform our genders.
Yeah.
And some perform differently than others. But so you're saying that the men you worked with on the building site kind of inspired. What was the link between them and Animal that we?
Adam has a whole backstory. So it was one of my earliest pieces of advice was that Adam should be a 3D character instead of a real life. So Adam, he lives with his mum. He was a handyman. And he goes around fixing things, but not particularly well for people. His mum's she likes the vodka, and she thinks he's rubbish.
Oh.
And she's just like, why don't you get a real job? You know, go out there and be a real man, sort of thing. And tries to get him to do things, but he clearly wants to be an entertainer. He really wants to sing, and he really likes to wear smart clothes, and he doesn't want to be elbow deep in filler paste or...
I was wondering where that was going, actually.
He just doesn't want to be that kind of bloke. But he tries to be because he thinks it's what he needs to be. So you start to see this in him. You see this sort of need to burst out of his shell, which is interesting for me because it's actually been something that's led me personally to discover a lot more about myself. I know people say this, but finding my own path and finding confidence in who I am and shedding who I thought I should be and becoming the person I am now. So that's like, I'm welling up.
Drag, it's that cliche thing, isn't it? Of just doing drag helped me find who I really was. But it is true.
Yeah.
There are things, I remember when I kind of first started with drag, there are things that Alfie would say and advice that I would then be giving myself and being like, what would Alfie do? And it's weird that it kind of happens where there's a different narrative that you're like, and it really does inform your everyday life outside of it.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're really interested in, I know you do a lot of work with Drag King history.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about this.
It's fascinating, actually, because it's something that we don't hear about very often. Yeah. A lot of people might have heard of a performer called Vesta Tilley.
Yep.
But you're thinking about one performer from one era, and there was a huge load of drag. Well, we call them drag kings now. At the time, they're called male impersonators or mashers. But it goes mashers. It goes way back to I think the earliest recorded one is 1850 or something like that, and then right the way up to the 1900s through to about 1935, male impersonators were headliners. And when I say headliners, I mean they were absolutely household names.
In sort of music hall times.
So yeah, people like Ella Shields, people like Hetty King, people like Gladys Bentley. They were people that people knew. They knew them. And they were extremely, extremely popular, earned a lot of money had big homes. They were, earning more than their whole family by the age of 10. These people were like a big deal.
Yeah.
And then they sort of slowly slid into obscurity.
Why do you think that happened? Is that something you know from your research?
We don't actually have factual evidence of why. Obviously, there would be still some big names who continued on, but the whole sort of idea of the music hall and the variety show was losing popularity around that time anyway. But it was also its connection to the queer community.
Was it always a queer art form in that time?
I don't know if it was. I think it was a political art form.
Yeah.
From my research, I found that the female impersonator as a solo act was starting to happen around the 1870s, so around the same time. But because of the law changing, it's called there was the Buggery Act, and then it was changed. And they had to have evidence to say that a man was gay, and then they would put him in prison. And then they dropped the fact that you needed a witness, so you didn't even need a witness anymore. You just had to write a letter saying, I think this person's probably a gay. And that would be enough to get them 10 years.
Whose business?
I know.
Your neighbour. What?
Apparently they weren't hung anymore. They were just sent 10 years of hard labour. But that's, dressing in women's clothing was enough. So if you can think how much more difficult it would have been to get onto the stage at that time.
And so that pushed, drag all together underground, I'm guessing.
Yeah. There is an essence, there's a way of looking at it where you can say, well, actually, the male impersonator sort of paved the way in terms of variety hall solo act, rather than being part of a performance where you come on and play the woman, which we have a long history of panto and things that happened and Shakespeare and all this stuff. Rather than that, the solo act who came on as a specifically dressed in a costume to specifically talk about gender roles, male impersonators sort of led the way. But it is interesting that the history of the male impersonator has been almost entirely buried. And many of those names, it's really hard to find them or find a photo of these headliners who toured, not just here, but in the States.
Yeah.
Like massive names.
Where were you finding these names, all this
you
information?
have to dig. But there's a really cool website that's being set up called Drag King History. They're on Instagram, they're on stuff, they've got their own website, they're finding all this information as a group of American kings who are piecing it all together. And it's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And so then we don't hear anything from 1935, 1940, something like that, up until 1969, when we hear about Stormy Delivery, a male impersonator who was also a bouncer, worked in New York. Absolutely incredible character she was a very proud lesbian, but she worked patrolling the streets, protecting people. She wasn't just at the Stonewall riots. On the night that it kicked off, she was one of the loiterers who had been picked up by police. And when they picked up female queer people from the street, they would often manhandle them. There's a lot of bad stuff flying around at this time, but they couldn't do anything, couldn't say anything. On this particular night, she was so fed up with it that she said, oh, for God's sake, and punched the police officer clean in the face and shouted, aren't you going to do anything? And that's when the Stonewall riots kicked off.
Oh, wow!
So that's the story that she's given. And it's been sort of corroborated by a couple of people who were there, but we don't have we know that there were bricks thrown and there was a march, and then we know lots of the names of other people who were party to the kicking off and the big movement and stuff. But her story gets lost so often, and it's really sad.
And I hadn't heard that story before.
She's awesome.
Oh my gosh. So that is Drag King History, which has been so wonderful to learn about. So thank you.
Yeah.
What is in the future for you?
I'm currently writing a show about Drag King history.
Is this a solo show?
It'll be a solo show, but it'll be an online solo show.
Amazing.
That talks also about the stuff that we've just talked about a little bit, but also about the 80s and 90s movement and what happened with the drag king scene around that time and where they went and who's still going, and America and Australia and the rest of Europe and what's happening now. I'm really passionate about it. I'm sure you can tell. I'm really passionate about it. And when I find other people who are passionate about it, it sort of sparks this energy, which I find so vital for life. But I also makes me wonder why we don't have a larger platform. But I think that's changing. And all I'm going to say is I'm just going to keep fighting until it does.
Oh, gorgeous. And thank you for doing it. Now tell me one thing. What is the peak for you? What do you have? Is there one goal that you want to achieve with Adam? Mine personally is I would like Christmas #1. So I'm thinking this kind of level, okay? It doesn't, anything is possible, but I'm thinking, is there one thing that deep down you go, I want to do that?
I would like to I would like to host a TV show. I'd like to do this. I would really like. I'd like to see a drag king, and when I say a drag king, I'd like it to be me. That'd be great. It doesn't have to be.
What sort of TV show?
I would like to see a drag king follow in the footsteps of someone like Lily Savage and have a TV career.
Yes.
And for drag kings to be a known thing as part of our culture, that aren't just a subgroup of a subgroup that exist in the basement, that are known. That's what I want. As said, doesn't have to be me, but that would be really nice.
Well, it's out in the world. You've manifested it. Adam All coming to a TV screen near you. Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you so much for watching. I've been Alfie Ordinary. You've been fabulous. I want you to stay fabulous. I want you to stay safe. I want you to love each other, and I want you to love yourselves. We'll see you next time. Lots of love. Bye. Bye.